for one last time, we want to thank the current GPP board members. If you're on the, if you're a current board member, could you please stand?
Thank you all for your service. Being a board member takes a lot of time. Lisa and I have done it for a while. I've done it for 12 years myself. And it takes quite some time.
Yes, it does. It's like having a full-time job. So we are very, very grateful for the new board that's coming up for 2020, and that will be announced tonight. But before we do that, is Lee Thomas here?
Yeah.
Hey, Lee.
Looking very festive in your red scarf.
Oh, we don't know.
Yes.
All right, I'm on the thing too.
Very good.
There you go.
I'll start here then. Okay. Prepping, we have a Christmas love letter. And Is it on Mike? We have in prep DMZ, DC Comic, TV Pilot, Genius Aretha Franklin, Life by the Ton, which is TV reality, Miss Universe Pageant, which is this weekend. Red Notice in prep for Netflix, in prep Samaritan for MGM, Terrico or Tarico, I'm not sure how they're doing it, Netflix in prep, in production Archer season 11, Atlanta Eats in production, Big Red season 1, aka WandaVision, Black Lightning season 3, Boomerang season 2, Council of Dads season 1 in Savannah, Dish Nation season 8, Doom Patrol season 2, Dynasty Season 3, El Dorado or Suicide Squad through February, First 48, which is a TV reality show, Freaky Friday the 13th, which is an indie feature for Universal, Ghost Draft for Paramount, goes through March, Legacy Season 2 through March, Lovecraft Country through December 13th, Meet the Flockas TV reality through January, OJ 25 TV reality through October of 2020. Respect feature, we have 2 Aretha Franklin movies. Respect, MGM feature, Sister Circle TV reality through the end of the year. Tag Team through March, The Aquarium season 2 through March, The Resident season 3 through April. The Slayton Sisters, it's just about the wrap, that's TV reality. Tiger Rising, indie feature, go through the middle of this month. Underground Railroad through February, Wife Swap through next June, Wild and Out season 14 and 15 through next year, and that's it.
Thanks, lady. And next we have internal governance nominating committee report, and our own dear Melissa Goodman.
Hi there. Hi. So the elections or the nominations were in November. Who headed up our nominating committee was Rick Estamond. On his committee, Rebecca Schrager and Samantha Worthen. Everyone ran unopposed, so per our bylaws here, at this meeting we just announced everyone and we don't have to vote. So the new elections, or the new elected that will take place starting January 1st, 2020. Oh, it's horrible to say 2020, wow. Co-President Trish Taylor and Anisha Bray, if you would stand up. Vice President Darius Evans. Is Darius here? There he is. Hey, Darius. Secretary Susan Moss. Treasurer Christy Claybaugh. Industry and Community Relations, John Wilkins. Where's John?
Right there.
See him back there. He is standing up. Marketing and Communications, Brianna Franklin.
Yeah.
Membership, Leslie Green. I believe Leslie's back in the back. Okay. Volunteer Coordination, Alexis Bushel. Is Alexis here?
I think she was running late.
Okay. She's running late. Education, Joe Williams. I don't see Joe. And that's it. They were.
There's be Rayvon as well in membership.
Okay, but that was not an elected position. She will be appointed. So, thank you, and we now just place them into election. So they are duly elected. Thank you.
Thanks, Melissa.
Oh, Peter Statopoulos, Government Relations, do you have a report tonight?
I'm going to handle it as part of my panel.
Oh, very good, okay. Then we'll go to Christy Kleibaugh. Do you have a treasurer's report?
The last one of 2019, getting ready to roll up and roll forward to 2020. And I know these accounting numbers are always so exciting at every meeting. Wanted to let you know that the board members are working diligently to prepare new budgets as we roll into 2020. The numbers are looking strong. Our net assets are still very, very much in the positive. We have a total, right now as of today, before we wrap up the year end, we have total assets of just over $52,000, which are represented by our operating account that holds $28,500 rounded, and we still have our SunTrust CD account, investment account, that's sitting at $11,500, and our PayPal account at $12,300. And we expect this to increase before year end, especially with some upcoming events and our sustainers contributions and member renewals before year end.
Thank you, Christy. Darius Evans, can you give an update on the HIP?
So, as most of you already know, the Holiday Industry Party is on. It's December the 8th, starting at 5 p.m. If you have not gotten a flyer, you should be getting it soon. You should have already gotten it, actually. And we are aware that there has been some issues with the website and with ticket purchases. The advance tickets, which were $20 in advance for members and $25 in advance for non-members, that ended on Sunday. But for tonight only, we will be selling tickets out front for those advance ticket prices. Beyond that, if you buy them online, they're going to go up to $25 for members, $35 for non-members, and more at the door. All right, so there will be tickets being sold out front if you want to get those advance ticket prices for the last time. All right?
Thank you, Darius. And John Wilkins, do you have Industry Community Relations report?
Let's let Lisa and Trish do something real quick before I do mine.
Okay.
So, Anissa and I, as the newly elected co-presidents, we wanted to do a little something special for our outgoing board members. Lisa and Clark, if you would mind stepping down here for just a second. Lisa and Clark have been working diligently, and they have been great co-presidents for GPP and great representatives for this organization. And we wanted to do a little something for them. Lisa, you said you wanted something that you could see, so we wanted, as a board, to present to you this lovely little award to say thank you so much for all your service.
That being co-president for GPP has been like the greatest honor of my career. So thank you all for always just being so pleasant and so welcoming, and I just love this industry and I love this organization, and I'm stepping down from being co-president, but I'm joining Peter Statopoulos on the Government Relations Board, so you can't get rid of me that easily.
Clark Coker here. As he said, he's been involved on the board for 12 years now. So we're going to give him a little something as an evening out. So we're giving you a really nice little gift card here so that you can have a lovely dinner out with your spouse and to say thank you very much for everything that you've done. Thank you, Clark.
This is a great group. We have to remember that camaraderie is why they come to Georgia. So we have to work with all the other organizations in the community to unite. That is the most important thing.
We have a few more thank yous too. These are our lovely co-presidents that are rolling off, but we also have some other board members that are leaving us too. And we would like to call Randall Franks up, our vice president. He'll be rolling off the board here too, and we wanted to give you a little thank you also.
The vice president's job is really unusual in that we serve the presidents and then we try to raise money. And we have been very blessed the last 2 years with a lot of success in raising money, and that's all because of the great board we have, and especially all the volunteers on our events committee. And I wish all the great success to continue with Darius as he takes over in that endeavor, as he's always been a part of what we've done these past 2 years. So please give all of our events and our board, everyone, a major big hand.
We have Deborah Childs.
And Deborah's rolling off as secretary.
Yeah, I've done 2 terms, but I will see you at the HIP meeting. I will be helping check people in.
We have on the volunteer board is Joan Carpos.
You like this, you really, really like
Thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So, one important announcement, we are running a Cyber Monday special, 20% off GPP membership for renewing and for first-time joiners up until the 8th. That's the holiday industry party Sunday date. So take advantage of that. If you need to renew or you want to join, it's a great time to, 20% off. Our next meeting is going to be January 7th. It's going to be an evening meeting, and it's going to be on post-production. We're still looking for a home for that. Michael Jackson is going to be joining me as co-chair for 2020 of Industry and Community Relations, so really excited about that. But yeah, that should be a great meeting. Our meetings are always the first Tuesday of the month, and just look for the email blast update, where that's going to be and who all it's going to entail. Without further ado, then let's get into this. State of the State meeting. We've got Peter moderating, and I'm going to let him just come on up and introduce the panel however he wants to. Thank you guys for being here tonight.
Hi, everybody. I'm actually going to ask all the panelists to come on up and introduce themselves. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce myself, and then I'm going to ask all the panelists to go ahead and have a seat, introduce themselves briefly, and then we'll go to the panel and kind of talk about where we are. And real quick, as a quick note, I want to make this interactive. So if anybody has a comment or question while we're talking, raise your hand, and we'll, it's a small room, so we'll get to you. Okay, thank you. All right, so good evening, everybody. I'm Peter Stathopoulos. I'm head of Governmental Affairs Committee. I'm an entertainment lawyer here in town and consultant. And all the other panel members, please introduce yourself.
I'm Susan Moss. I'm Regional Set Relations Representative for SAG-AFTRA. My job is to go to sets and serve our members and make sure production is abiding by the contracts.
I'm Mike Akins. I'm with the IETSE Local 479. Ryan Millsap, I'm the chairman and CEO of Blackhall Studios.
I'm Andrew Greenberg. I'm the executive director of the Georgia Game Developers Association and the chairman of the DeKalb Entertainment Commission.
Director of the Georgia Film Office. Nope. Here we go again. Director of the Georgia Film Office.
Good evening, I'm Louis Massey with Impact Public Affairs. We've recently changed our name and we've been the lobbyist for GPP for about 11 years now. Good to be with you.
Bernie Lawrence Watkins, Georgia Music Partners. I'm on the board of Georgia Music Partners, and I'm an entertainment attorney practicing in the state of Georgia for 20 years.
All right, so we're going to try to keep this interactive and interesting, but I thought I'd start out with kicking off things of the discussion, kind of where are we as a state. I wanted to talk about what do we have in place in terms of things that are upholding the industry, and just talk about what's the state of the industry before we get into more specific topics. So I'll just kick it off by noting we currently have a very strong entertainment tax incentive, which everybody's aware of, that we're trying to support. We've got a relatively new standalone post-production incentive. We've got a music incentive. We've got a digital interactive entertainment incentive, which is a little bit different than the film tax credit. So maybe the panel could talk about what we've got and kind of what we're missing versus other states, maybe in terms of not only incentives but other segments of the industry.
As far as professional actors, SAG-AFTRA, and Melissa is my fact checker here, so she'll let me know if I get it wrong. We've grown to 1,700 members for SAG-AFTRA. We cover actors, dancers, singers, stunt people, even puppeteers. So with adults and children, we have 17 active members. We've had a lot of people move here from other markets because of the work and the incentive. And what I've also seen more of this year, and I hope to see increase in the coming years, is more of the student films, short films, short project agreements that can come under our contracts. Also the lower budget tiers. What I'd love to see is more Georgia homegrown content. And we have the contracts to cover that, and we are seeing more of that bubble up.
From the labor side of things for the motion picture industry, television industry, we really need to say thank you to everybody in the room, because what we have done over the last 15 years is phenomenal. You're looking for things that we're going to do in the future, and frankly, from our perspective, we are in a very, very good spot. We have climbed to number 3 in the nation as far as total production, and I do not see us losing that. There is an insatiable demand for new product, which means there's an insatiable demand for jobs. There's an insatiable demand for content. There's an insatiable demand for studios. There's an insatiable demand for post-production. And because of the history that we've had through GPP, through working in the States, with the collaboration with everybody in the state of Georgia, we've got nowhere else to look but up.
Well, I couldn't agree more with Mike about the fact that we have nowhere to look but up. I will say, we face a lot of competition from the UK and Canada, and I think we need to take that very seriously. Certainly on the union side, when you think about the fact that the jobs in the UK or Canada are non-union jobs versus keeping all the work in the United States allows the union to grow and allow the workers in the United States to grow, which is what I'd really love to see. So I think we should really push hard on that and push hard on the production companies to take that into account, to where they say, hey, if I can make this in the UK, or I can make this in Canada, or I can make this in the United States, let's keep it in the United States if we can. I'd really love to see that.
And I'll continue the symphony we're hearing about nowhere to go but up.
in the game industry. We started in 2005. The beginning of the year with only 5 studios in the entire state. We now have more than 160 all around the state. We've got thousands of people now working in game development, simulation development, related areas around the state. Our latest economic impact report showed $830 million in economic impact, with $430 million in direct revenue coming into the state. Some very significant figures, especially when we consider that the game tax credit is only 12.5 million total. It's capped at that level. So we're seeing $830 million in economic impact off of a $12.5 million credit. What we've been excited about on the game side is most of the games here are owned by Georgians. I don't just mean they're playing them, I mean the people who are creating them, who create the IP, are Georgian. So everything is being done here, and that's something I'm very excited about, seeing more on the film side as well. And I think we will be seeing the appetite, as Mike Enrine have said, is insatiable. In my role with the Cab Entertainment Commission, we're seeing Netflix, Amazon, and more, Apple looking for so many more productions. And it's starting to blur the lines more and more. So many of our people are working in film, whether they're doing visualization, film pre-vis, or if they're working post-pro, or if they're working on some of the games that are crossing over more and more. It's really exciting at the level of how well they can cooperate, the level of cooperation between these areas now. And I think that is one of the areas where Georgia does have a foot up, where these areas can come together, these groups can come together and plan ways to make the entire entertainment spectrum, not just little silos, grow and prosper.
I think obviously we could stand to have more development here, more visual effects houses, more, where they shoot it out here and then they take it somewhere else to the UK or back to California to finish it. We'd like to get that piece of it as well. We've certainly, thank you to all the people in the room that have supported the tax credit. Obviously, it is considered to be one of the top tax credits in the world, if not the top tax credit in the world by most of the major studios, and it's done everything we'd hoped, I think, and quite a bit more. We also oversee the music tax credit. It hasn't, unfortunately, been, we haven't gotten the traction that we would like to have seen with the music tax credit. We don't oversee the post, but my understanding is that it is doing well. I think this could definitely be the upcoming session where we will see some changes to the film tax credit. I know we're in a kind of a weird place with this new audit coming out, and I think this is probably going to be the year that it does get opened up. So.
Well, thank you, and I want to congratulate all of you in the audience for being part of a wonderful industry. It's been fun to watch it. Our firm started working with GPP in 2008, and so much has happened since then, and it's a result of folks like you in this room, and all of you in this room have contributed to it. From the General Assembly side, I see a lot more support for the industry than was there early on in the life of the film tax program. But as Lee mentioned, there's always challenges ahead. The state, as a lot of you know, is suffering through somewhat of a budget crisis, in the sense the governor's asked for 4% cuts in this fiscal year and 6% in the next. So people begin to start looking at ways to make up that gap. And the film tax credit program will be discussed. I don't think there's going to be a serious effort to get rid of it. At some point, I know we've discussed this before, there's going to be discussion of a cap on it. And that is going to be something that we'll have to deal with going forward, as some other states have. Hopefully we'll deal with it better than some other states. But again, congratulations on being part of a great industry. I think the best days are ahead of us. We all have challenges ahead, but we're certainly headed in the right direction.
On the music side, I'd like to say that, Georgia has always had a very strong music community. One of the main issues is how do we work collectively to make those aware of where the studios are, who's who, and to keep the money in the state of Georgia. One of the main issues that we see is that people will come here, they'll record, and as they grow in popularity, they will leave the state of Georgia and go to states like California or New York to record, and that creates an economic problem for us. And it's really about, in my opinion, how do we properly publicize who's here, what are the incentives that we have here in the state that's going to make the creatives want to stay here and benefit, because there's a lot to be offered, but I just think that we still are struggling in terms of effectively communicating and working together to get the word out. So that's something that I'd like to see, just working with the music community and the powers that be to help them understand, as well as the creatives, for them to know that there is help. You know, there are people looking to listen to what they have to say, what issues they have and concerns, and how can they be properly addressed. When it comes to the hip hop community, and you look and see what's charting, a lot of the artists and the songs are coming from the state of Georgia. But when you look at other genres, that's not happening. So how do we work to make those efforts be heard as well? And the other talents that's here, you know, how can they effectively experience the same form of publicity, the same form of popularity, and grow in that area as well.
So along those lines, you know, we've heard a lot about how we've had so much success with attracting maybe production or recording here. What can we do, and I'll open this up to you know, the wider group, what can we do to grow and retain talent here? And how can we get more creatives into Georgia? And if it's not something, you know, the state's done its part, it's passed the credit. Is there anything else that we can do as a community, or the cities can do, or the counties can do? I know Andrew's with the CAB. You know, what can we do to attract and retain creative talent and really compete with, you know, LA and New York?
I think in many ways, Mike Akins has kind of set the bar high with what they've done with Force 79, not only training a great workforce of Georgians, but making this a place where folks from around the world, not just around the US, but around the world, want to come work and become union members. In the game industry, certainly workforce is one of our biggest issues. We need very talented programmers, artists, musicians, audio designers, user interface designers, user experience designers, and so forth. So that workforce component is a big part, both for us, for the post-production side, and I imagine for a lot of the other creative industries. Thankfully, the universities are definitely stepping up their game, be it GSU, be it KSU, and others, but we still need that higher level of workforce at higher caliber, the folks who can be leads within a studio, and I believe this is also true of most of the other creative areas. They need those folks who can't just turn out the basic pixels, but can really refine the art and define a direction and understand the technology. This isn't just on the state to create. Obviously, GFA is in place and we're working on some of these areas. CMII is working very actively on this, but it's also on the industry to sort of curate this talent, help develop it. We do these efforts within the Georgia Game Developers Association, constant workforce development efforts, but there really needs to be more and a greater focus throughout the state. And right now, I think we're doing a good job retaining most of these people, but they're at that mid-level when salaries, they can get very tempting out of state. And we are still losing some good folks to other jurisdictions, unfortunately. But we are in a good position, but that's certainly one area where a lot of us can work together to improve.
Anybody else? Anybody else seeing creatives?
I mean, I think we've done a great job of attracting creatives here. I mean, we've had so many people move here, or, you know, I mean, it was unthought of years ago that we would have something like Picture It that is, you know, well, you're part of Picture It, right?
Right.
Well,
Thanks for plugging it.
Yes. So, I mean, you know, that was unheard of years ago, and now, you know, the new companies that will be moving on to the Pinewood lot, or what Pinewood will become.
Well, can we?
I think it's very exciting.
I want to put Ryan on the spot. You know, what are the sound stages going to get into the content production game? Is that a natural evolution?
Well, I don't think all of them will. Certainly, you know, I think Dan's setting a standard there that I think is a good standard. The biggest question is just where the money comes from. I mean, we can get the right talent, we can get the right development talent, we can get the high-level executives to come live in Georgia. The real question is always just where does the investment money come from? Because right now, a lot of the investment money in Georgia doesn't understand how to make money in film and television. And so then we're left with a lot of the development executives that if you're a young development executive and you have big ambitions, you run to the coast to get money. And they're wise to do that because they're running to places that people understand the pitch. And they understand what they're trying to do. And so just like we've been able to build in Georgia a really strong venture capital and technology base now, to where if you're a young tech entrepreneur, you don't have to run to Silicon Valley, you can get funded in Georgia. You can build a whole company in Georgia. Now that might not apply up and down the whole tech spectrum, but there are areas of tech that were very, very strong. Now that was an evolution. And so we're kind of in the same place on an evolutionary basis with our money. If we could get Georgia money that could get into the right hands and have that money then multiplied and teach Georgians how to make money in film and television, then we could make that kind of quantum leap, right? Where we go from being a production hub to being a development hub. And when you go from a production hub to a development hub, then you just completely energize the level of creativity. Because now you might be a creative working on a production, but then you also could be a creative working on your own production, your idea, you know, and so that you could be doing both. The way that you might do in LA or New York, where you say, well, I'm doing this job and I love my job, but I also dream about whatever, being a writer, creating a show, being a showrunner. And we don't have that true aspirational pipeline at this point.
I'd like to build, if I may for a second. I think we did this right to start with, because when you talk about these budgets, about 70% of that budget is labor. So in order to build your industry, you had to supply the labor because it was the most cost-effective way to attract that work in. We didn't worry so much about where the money came from. We had to provide the labor to get the production done. We've done that. Now the creative side is starting to follow that labor force. The creative side is starting to live here. They're starting to use the workforce that's here. It's now affecting their bottom line. Well, the creative side of that now is going into what Ryan had to say about investments. Now we're starting to understand the investment side of that and how it works. So from this perspective, the reason I say we've got nothing to do but look up is because now we have established the workforce, we have established the industry, we've established the best tax credit in the nation, and now the creative side is what we're looking up to. The creative side is going to come here. It's already moving here. And just as soon as that creative side gets here, they're going to bring the finance side with them. And that's the part that is going to have the insatiable demand for product that I'm looking forward to in the future.
On the music side, I think we're having, I know we're having some level of difficulty because we have creatives that live here, but we don't have the companies like Sony or Warner or Universal that have offices here. They hire labor, they have contractors, independent contractors that live here, so they're able to keep their costs down, and that's a problem. So the question is, how do we effectively draw these entities so that they can have offices and then hire staff and full-time employees? So, you know, that's an effort that still needs to be worked out. That used to be the case some years ago, but they all left, and they just don't see Georgia as being that place for them to actually set up a place, an entity, or, you know, to have an office. So, you know, how do we effectively create those incentives for companies like Sony and Warner and Universal to be here and effectively work together?
to build on what my fellow panelists have talked about, the game development tax credit, in many ways, I think has been a bellwether for how this industry is moving. It was established alongside the film tax credit in the very earliest days, but it's gone through some significant changes along the way. So whereas film credit is uncapped, the interactive productions credit is capped. But there's some other important changes. No company can get more than a certain amount. And the productions, they have to actually be in production, no getting the money after they've been launched. They're payroll dependent as opposed to the overall spend. And a lot of this helped drive that actual investment. You had to put the money into the workers to be sitting in the seats to continue working over a long time, which will encourage longer term production companies here in Georgia, if those are the sort of changes that happen to the film tax credit as well. I've said for a while that in some ways the game industry has kind of been the canary in the coal mine. The changes that will happen to that credit are the ones that legislators will first look toward when they are thinking about any changes they might want to have for the film credit. I think the film credit is done very well, uncapped, and in the form it is now. If it is going to change, however, be cognizant that that's one of the first places legislators are going to look, and its impact will carry along.
Well, I think we had a question from the audience or a statement. Molly?
Yeah, I think that one of the big things that we're missing is essentially like middle markets here. We have the large divide in between the big productions and and indie productions. And in the last like 10 years, because of the success of production, that divide has gotten larger and larger. And that's a big difference in our town versus other places. If you are trying to work in LA or somewhere like that, is you can walk into like Awesomeness or YouTube or, you know, one of those places, and you have like a ladder that you can climb, and like the ladder is kind of missing here because we don't have a middle market. I don't like know exactly what the answer is, but there's nowhere for us to start an indie film to go unless we essentially like win the lottery. And it's I know that like with the tax credit, you guys have like are talking about proposing like $250,000, which would make a huge difference for people like us. But that's like the scary part, like is like this middle market that just doesn't exist here at all. And like Picture It is awesome because, you know, we can walk in and pitch stuff to them, but you are still taking stuff to CBS and NBC, so it still is like a big divide. It's awesome stepping stone to have, but it's still, you have to win the lottery essentially.
Well, along those lines, you know, what could we do as a community to educate the investment community? And I'm very encouraged by what Mike said, which is the creatives are going to bring finance with them. But in the interim, as that's happening organically, what could we as an industry, and I'm talking about everybody from the entertainment lawyers to the actors to the studio people, to educate investors? Should we be having workshops? Should we, you know, how do you educate the investor class how to make money in the entertainment industry? And do we have that knowledge in Georgia? I mean, I'm challenged the panel and the audience here.
We absolutely have the knowledge in Georgia. I think we've just had so much growth on the physical production side, and we don't have an abundance of that talent in Georgia, and so there's just time constraints, I think. Right, you see even the evolution, what is going to happen at Pinewood, they needed to have 5, 6, 7 years of physical production to get to a place where they could imagine like what would be next. Now, in that situation, you have a wonderful founding member in Dan, right, who could not only fund the physical production, but then when the evolution was ready and he felt comfortable, he could say, I'm going to put up some money to create production, whatever that is next. Now, the difficulty, I agree with Mike that creatives will bring the finance, but that doesn't solve the problem, because if the finance comes from someplace that's not Georgia, then all the profits go somewhere that's not Georgia.
Amen.
Right? And so you got to get to a place where the Georgia money is making money in this and understands how to make money in this. I think that evolution is near. I think we just need to stay the course. And I know certainly Blackhall, we've been dabbling in production and kind of setting up teams and starting to do development. And I think in next year we'll probably make some bigger moves with how that looks. But we also have to be open to the fact that production in Georgia might look different than production in LA, because culture in Georgia is different than culture in LA. And then it's just a question of whether or not we can take that cultural production and send it through pipelines that make money. Yep. Now, the good news about what we've done is we have all the right relationships into those pipelines, right? Because we have a lot of friends in LA, and we're never gonna try to not to try to have an industry that's not tied to Los Angeles, because Los Angeles is the pipeline of distribution. So even if it's our money, and now we're partnering with them in distribution, at least then we're sharing in the profits of that distribution, which is really where we want to be. We're not going to try to displace them. We just want to be able to partner with them.
And I also think that continued education is extremely important. I think workshops need to happen, more workshops, and proper publications of what's taking place in Georgia so that people are aware of the opportunities as well as the subject matters, what's being discussed. Because when it comes to being an investor, I think people are not really knowledgeable about what that means and at what stage you're considered an investor. Someone who's a mother that's giving up $10,000 to her son, that's an investment. But they don't understand that. You just think, oh, they're just giving money to their son. So there's laws that govern how that should be done. So I think that continued workshops is extremely important.
So from the audience, let's just pick some folks. You, sir, in the third row, yes.
Okay. So, answer this question, why this might be a stupid idea. But in any case, I'm not understanding why it's not possible to bring Georgia investors, because I know we have plenty of millionaires in Georgia who can connect with the creators. In this room, there's probably tons and tons of people who have screenplays and other kind of products that could be married to investors directly from Georgia, and then build the infrastructure that's associated with how do you roll all of that out? How do you bring these parties together in order to produce a viable?
I'm going to comment on that, and I promise I'll get to you, Nancy, as well.
Does it make sense?
It makes plenty of sense. So from my little narrow window as an entertainment lawyer and as somebody that started a television development company, part of the problem is that the creative community does not talk to the investment community. I mean, how many, in my experience, they're just very different communities, and trying to get the creatives in the same room with the investment class is just very difficult. So how do we bring those communities together?
Through GPP, that's what I'm saying.
Okay.
Well, normally you bring those people together through a brokerage class, right? Or a deal-making class.
Right.
Which we don't have in Georgia at this point, right? So we don't have a lot of agents, right? The agents are to the deal-making class. So it's not that this isn't going to happen, it just takes time. It's an evolution.
Nancy.
All right, so I hear all the time that we have so many millionaires in Georgia and we have all this money in Georgia, why aren't they investing in film? Georgia investors across the board, including tech, do not do high-risk investments. We are not creating software companies that are business to consumer on a regular basis. We're not doing the next dating app. Enterprise software does really well here because there are so many customers. And I feel it breaks my heart to hear how often, even from people on the panel, that there's all this money in Georgia. Why aren't they investing in Georgia? I've been here for 5 years. There's not an investor class in Georgia for film on a regular basis. There are investors that will invest in film if they know the people involved or they have a reason to be investing, the topic or something like that. And they would be investing in a film shooting in Wisconsin if it's their niece who's shooting it. Georgia investors will not get behind content created in Georgia on a regular basis until Hollywood gets behind content created in Georgia on a regular basis. And that takes away a lot of the risk. If you know, like I just did a deal that Sony's on the other side of, and the investors just were walking up and giving them money because Sony Pictures is the senior investor.
So I'm going to throw this to the panel. Some interesting, challenging questions have been raised. I'll get to you, sir, in just a sec. So, from my standpoint, the best people to approach about investing in entertainment are people who are already involved in that industry in other aspects. But I'll throw it to the panel. Is there an investor class here that's going to invest in content? What else can we do to bring the communities together?
So when you're an investor who's got $1 million, you can put into a film and you don't know what the success will be because you haven't done that before. You can put in real estate that you've invested in before, and you know that in a year you'll get $1.2 million for your investment. Do something you're familiar with that you know is safe, and 99.99% of the time, that's exactly their tracks they're going to take. And that's what we saw in games until we got some very significant tech investors to come into the space and be successful within the space. In film, you can't name an investor in Georgia who succeeded investing in the IP of the film. Certainly folks have done well investing in the studios, but who's done the IP at this point? And
well, except for Tyler.
Yeah, Tyler
one
Perry.
notable example, that's true. But what you see generally with
Kendrick brothers, right?
Yeah.
what you generally see with investors in tech is they follow one another. We have the Atlanta Tech Angels, who are a great investment group in this area, and they work together to help decide whether something is going to have a high chance of success. They all put money in order to make sure nobody's going to lose too much. They work together very effectively. I haven't seen that yet in film. We were talking about, you're right, there are some great ones, but I'm not seeing the...
Well, the Kendrick brothers down in Albany, I mean, they crush it every movie, but, you know, we've seen, there have been projects where they've gotten, you know, angel investors that have put up money, and every one of them that I can think of has lost a ton of money. I mean, crazy, stupid money. So it's got to be the kind of thing where people want to be a producer, and they want to go to cocktail parties, and they want to talk about it, because they're not getting great information. But I think that in the you know, earlier iterations, there were investor classes and stuff like that, and what you had was a bunch of producers trying to get to these people to get the money, and if you had somebody that had money, you didn't want them in that room with all those producers who were trying to get their money. So you're trying to keep your investors hidden, which I get.
And that's smart. I mean, the worst thing that could happen to us is for our investor class, which absolutely exists. These are smart people that if you can teach them how to make money, they'll do it again, right? Now, the worst thing that could happen is for our investor class in Georgia to put money into films and television that lose money.
Right.
Because then they will all say, I'm not doing that again, right?
Yep.
So now the good news is that we have a wonderful history in Ted Turner, right? We have somebody who created pipelines for new content, created channels, created opportunities for creation of content, figured out ways to make money by creating content or buying content and distributing basically from Georgia. So it's not that we have to create this totally from scratch. We have an incredible history here already of not just the creation of content or the production of content, but the distribution of content. And if we can learn from that model a little bit, I think we'll do really, really well. All of this is going to happen as long as the tax credit doesn't go away. It's just an evolution. And it's an evolution that generally is a 20-year evolution, really a 30-year for an entire career. So we're 10 years into that process. We have another 10 years from now, we'll be talking about all this cool stuff that's happened. And if we can last 30 years, then we have an industry. And that's just the way it works.
Well, and I think you also have to think that there are people like Will Packer and the Horsemans, the Kendrick brothers. I mean, Tyler Perry, what he's doing is amazing in the content, the amount of content that he's producing and the facilities that he's building. The Rue brothers are stepping up. So one of the things that I do like about this market especially is the diversity. And I feel like we are really well-rounded to grow in a lot of areas. And people are moving here to do projects and staying. Like, they'll come to do a project, stay, whether they admit they live here or not is a different thing. But I feel like that creative base and that talent base is building, and that money, whether it comes through them or comes to them with the other people, I think the education piece is still missing, but we are developing a super solid base.
Right, and Will Packer, his first movie in '96 was like $50,000, and the next one was $200,000, and the next one was, $400,000, and then he went to $2 million, and then he went to $12 million. I mean, he didn't, he just did it by himself and raised $50,000 and four-walled it and drove it around the state. So, I mean, he is self-made, and,
And it's starting to happen. My understanding is that Tyler Perry early on connected with Lionsgate, and Lionsgate invested in his content, and that was a very successful partnership.
He was doing a play somewhere, and the Lionsgate execs saw all the people standing in line and said, "What are you waiting for?" And they said Tyler Perry, and they'd never heard of him, nor had we,
So there is a model for more established companies to come in and invest in content here. You know, my little company, we got CBS to invest in us. So I think there are models to do that. We just have to, I'm asking, you know, how can we accelerate it? But before I move on to another topic, anybody else? We had one, yes, sir. No.
I feel like I'm hearing that we need to teach Georgia why they should invest. Do we know why people in California invest, really? And is it not, you know, what's the profile of somebody that's willing to give over money for any film is very chancy, unless you got a Tom Hanks or a Nicole Kidman, which they don't come from Georgia, so it's going to be hard to get people from Georgia that don't know Georgians to put money into it. Do we understand why those people invest, really? Do we not need to learn and not us teaching the Georgians?
Well, I'll jump in to say that I believe the mindset has to be changed. When people think of Georgia, they're not seeing Georgia as the entertainment state. They think California is entertainment, and that all the top talent comes from California, and Georgia is secondary to that. So I think we have to work on how we promote Georgia effectively across the country so that we are not seen as the entertainment industry of the South. We're looked at as the entertainment industry, and we're at the top, we have all the top talent. And so, you know, it starts with the mindset, and once we start promoting it that way, I think we'll see an effective change.
I don't think we should be upset with ourselves. Hell, like you said, we're only 10 years into it. My God, we're babies, really.
That's right.
In terms of
Peter, I'm just going to say a couple quick things. Brennan Dicker's here. He's head of a new program some of you may know about called CMII. And one of the things maybe that can help with all of these issues that we've discussed tonight is bringing those students along in this industry. And they're doing some really innovative, creative things there. These folks that are in that program now are going to be leaders in this industry in Georgia for years to come. And maybe there's a finance piece in the CMII program at some point.
There you go, Brendan.
LaRonda had a question.
Well, not necessarily a question, but my comment is for Bernie. Bernie, I think the perfect segue, the perfect intersection between film and music right now is the music video production. And is there a way that, you know, maybe GPP or maybe all of us collectively can target or maybe talk to the record labels about even kind of looking at their model? Because the record labels, if they make, you know, mass amount of videos for all of their artists, you know, take Sony. Sony gets the tax incentive on, you know, they're a big corporation. They get the tax incentive on the film side. Excuse me for blocking the way. Tax incentive on the film side when they make movies, but, you know, Sony Music Corporation, right? They have like, you know, thousands of artists that make lots of videos. It's content that's constantly moving now. So maybe that's another way to, because if we get those music videos done here in Georgia, right, that brings the artists, that brings the talent. And what never fails is stars attract stars, and that attracts money. And so I think that's another way to.
I agree. I totally agree.
I'm going to save the rest of the questions for the end. I'm sorry if I can't get to everybody. How can we, one thing I'm hearing, and Lewis, I'll ask you to chime in on this, is that you know, some rural legislators are asking what's the benefit of this industry for them. GPP is very active, and I think we're unique amongst the various industry groups in trying to, you know, bring this industry to rural Georgia. What besides what GPP is doing, what else can we collectively do to, you know, bring this industry to places outside of Atlanta?
Well, it's a great question. I guess the Camera Ready program has been a success. I mean, that's one step in the right direction, I think, for sure. The leadership in the General Assembly is somewhat mixed, but there are a lot of rural leaders in the General Assembly. Most of you know that, and so it's important and incumbent on all of us to make sure that they understand that people in their district benefit from the tax credit program, maybe not quite as much as metro areas yet. But I think I've found it very effective to have people that rent furniture to a film, or that have a brother or a cousin that was in a movie, or somebody wrote part of a movie, in any way that you can talk to your legislators to make sure that they know that it's not just the big time actors and actresses that benefit from this, but it's hundreds and hundreds of small businesses all across the state that provide services to to this industry. It's a challenge though, because Georgia is made up of several metro areas, obviously one very big metro area, 159 counties, which I think is still more counties per square mile than any state in the country. If you were starting from scratch, you probably wouldn't have 159 counties, but it's awfully hard to get any county to raise their hand and volunteer to go away or merge with another county. That's probably not going to happen in the near future. So I don't have any, there are no magic answers to that, Peter, no silver bullets, but I think the Camera Ready program and going out and what Lee and her folks are doing and what GPP continues to do in that area is a big help.
We did, Peter, just put together the 12 region map, and with that we have a story about a vendor that it was used on films in each of the 12 regions, and we're working on an interactive map on our webpage that will be all 159 counties. That's a little more daunting, but I was in Tiger, Georgia a week before last and got stopped at a four-way stop by a movie, which is crazy. Lincolnton had a movie. 2 were going down in Thomasville. I mean, we also got a great kind of portrait and slide from a Gemini man that used 330 vendors from 64 very small cities around there. So if anybody could use those kind of assets when they're talking to people, let us know. We're happy to get them to you.
When does that map go live?
The map that we have, you can use it any time. I did it for the year-end report, which is coming up, and we also are giving it to, like Senator Albers. We're making these maps so that the legislators can help tell our story. So I'm happy to get them to you.
And also, I think one of the things we started in the last term, and we're going to continue to partner with the film offices to do some regional meetings. We've done 4 in the past. This year we probably get into, like Lee, I travel all around the state. My colleague is actually down in Tifton. I was in Sate Noguchi yesterday. I mean, like, that's the thing that I don't think it's as hard a story to tell anymore, that this is more spread out than it was originally. They're doing an interactive map. I think we're going to work with them to create some aids for camera readies and for locations, because some of it is just making sure their locations know they need really quality pictures. That's, a good description and quality pictures will go a long way in promoting your location. And GPP, Trish is working to institute that program, and I think we're also going to work on other ways to message that this is not just downtown Atlanta or even a metro Atlanta thing. It goes Augusta, Columbus, Savannah, even Clayton. I've been to shows up in Clayton. I put a lot of miles on my car going to these amazing sets, because locations is another one of our strengths here in the state.
When we were faced with this on the game side, we actually had to have people write in, legislators, we had an issue on the game tax credit. And our advantage is that there are more than 20 colleges and universities around the state with game or game-related programs. So we didn't just have the students writing in, their parents were writing in, because they want their children to be able to work in Georgia. They don't want them leaving to California, New York, Washington State whenever they graduate. So we had legislators telling us that they were getting parents writing to them from Valdosta, from Waycross. All these rural legislators had no idea there was an interest in game development there, and we have programs, game development programs at Wiregrass Tech in Valdosta, Georgia Southern University, and a lot more. In addition, now we're seeing this explosive growth of esports, where in our Georgia Esports League we have more than 18 colleges already involved, and again, it's around the state. One of our inaugural schools was, again, Wiregrass Tech in Valdosta. So this is University of North Georgia, all their campuses, these are the tech schools, these are all the schools. And as we keep the students involved, their parents get more interested, and that has become a significant resource for us in dealing with legislators.
I'll make one comment on that too. I think if we take the long view is about education, and mostly education even at the high school level. So we've spent a lot of time now trying to figure out how to start funneling money into the Georgia Film Academy's program to get this curriculum into the high schools and the high schools all throughout the state. Because we think both the way to create grassroots engagement through of the parents is really to get the students to a place where they start loving making short movies. They love playing with cameras, and they love doing editing, and suddenly this becomes one of their primary hobbies, no different than gaming. If you get the children of a generation really engaged, then the parents will follow. And so right now we don't have enough education statewide in film and television, and as we get that, then it becomes just a normalized part of what it means to be a Georgian, right? I mean, we're trying to figure out how the next 10 years, however the next 10 years do we make it as Georgian to make a short film as it is to drink Coca-Cola or fly Delta, right? And so the only way we can do that is to start to take the long view and start to say the entire state needs to be educated. How do we do that?
Absolutely agree with that. To build on it, last month I met with a legislator, a rural legislator, who had been to his daughter's high school ceremony, whatever, where they were handing out the varsity letters, and now we have the students who letter in varsity esports. So all of the computer game competitors were coming across the stage with football players and the rest. And this just had absolutely amazed him, but now he realizes this is a permanent part of their culture. And I'd love to see this happen for film across the state as well. In DeKalb, we do the DeKalb Film Festival for the high schools as the DeKalb Entertainment Commission, and I have no idea why I don't have these happening all over the state right now.
Yeah, and Tricia, one sec. I would also like to see the business community throw some marketing dollars at this. I mean, my understanding is, you know, the larger corporations in Georgia have thrown some money at marketing music and developing music artists. I'd love to see that start to happen for filmmakers and other content creators.
Well, I'll tell you, 2 months ago we started something called the Georgia Film Foundation, which is targeted just at this, which we're still on a little bit of the development side because we need to find an executive director for that, and we're working through some of those details and how this is all going to play out. But the whole idea is to then focus on how we educate the corporate citizens about how much benefit we can have by funneling this kind of education, which then creates all the job growth. But being able to start to drive that Georgia investment money in the future workforce, and then you get engagement and participation both from the highest levels and at the grassroots levels, and that's how you impact culture.
And we've given away more than 20,000 scholarships to esports competitors. I don't know who's giving the scholarships to the film students in Georgia, but I'd love to see that. I mean, we're now seeing the results of this with Cox putting up a $100 million esports facility and a lot more investment happening with the Hawks and others. So,
Yeah, I just wanted to tag on to what Brian and Susan and Lee and Andy were all saying. GPP is one of our big initiatives is to go statewide. And we're doing that through education, through helping out, and Lee has been great. They were a sponsor last year, coming on again as a sponsor this coming year to work with the Camera Ready folks throughout the state of Georgia and educating in the rural areas, because I know our governor now has taken on his initiative that he wants to expand education and expand the rural areas of Georgia, and that includes filmmaking in Georgia. And so we're doing that also by wrapping things around film festivals. We sponsor about 12 film festivals throughout the state of Georgia, and that goes from the bottom of the state all the way to Valdosta to the top of the state and all the way through. And we want to tell these stories. We want to invite these investors and these business people into these meetings and tell the stories about what is the economic impact that filmmaking is in their community and what is the leave behind.
Real quick, before I take any more questions, John, how much more time do we have?
We're at 5 past 8.
Okay, and
8:30 is our
8:30 is our hard stop? Okay. I'll keep taking questions from the audience. Email.
Good evening. Hi, everyone. My name is Kelly Rose. I'm both a post-producer, so post-production has been my life for 15 years, and I've been able to both take advantage and see the development of post here in Georgia for the last few years. And I'm also a candidate for Georgia Senate District 17, because I believe instead of having just lobbyists, we need to get in and have a real voice and a vote here, because I can tell you that staffing has been one of the hardest things that I've had to do since moving here. And what it comes down to, and I think everyone needs to know this, in post-production, they can take an Avid certified class, but that doesn't teach you show experience and infrastructure. And I cannot hire these people over as anything more than an intern without some kind of knowledge of the inner workings. And unfortunately, as we're growing, this industry, that is something we also have to consider, is that we haven't been offering that and what we can do. And I can tell you, one of the points you made in the beginning, and maybe a couple of you could address this, what can we get for California to come here? I can tell you unequivocally, it's the politics, right? Because we cannot, unfortunately, separate that at this time. Let's be clear, that's who we are. So, but it's okay, because when I call people and say, I need you to come out here, they go, well, what's the temperature there in Georgia right now? And I've had more conversations like that than I care to admit, and I've spent more time on that than I care to admit. But the fact of the matter is that's true. And so until we make some clear efforts, and I encourage everybody to get invested and involved, because I'm in Henry County and Newton County, which could be considered rural, we are active and we do want this to stay, but the only way we're gonna get it to stay is some changes. And the changes are, it's all intertwined, and until we acknowledge that, I'm also currently a post-production consultant for Tyler Perry, and I'm helping with their growth. And I just want to put that out there, because that is also, with the amount of staffing that we have to do and the amount of production that we have in hiring local, it's just not there. So I'm open to talk to anybody at how we can develop this, because I believe in Georgia and I want to grow this, but we can't do it just saying everything's fine and we have great talent here. We have to acknowledge the fact that we have a lot of work to do. So, nice to meet you.
Likewise. Anybody from the panel want to respond? I'm gonna ask another topic, then we'll take some more questions. And what we'll probably do is, in a few minutes, we'll do a few more panel topics, and then we're gonna open it up once again for questions towards the end. Lee, could you talk a little bit about what the cities are doing? I don't know if that's a topic that you can speak on, but what is Columbus up to? What is Savannah up to? Kind of what are the counties and cities doing?
Yeah, I mean, well, those are the two that are, have incentives on top of the state's incentives, and Savannah's has been super successful. I mean, they have a big NBC series down there now, Council of Dads, that's supposed to be that's supposed to take the place of This Is Us. I mean, that's how much they think of this series. So that is exciting. It has been back-to-back in Savannah since they put this incentive in place. And now Columbus, the gentleman that runs the Columbus Film Fund was in our office a couple of days ago, and he said that's going very well. They do have plenty of money. I think they started with $5 million, and I think they have funded one thing, I think this year, and that's it, right?
How much of that is that all city money, or some of that private money?
It's all private money.
All private,
I believe. Yeah, it's all private money that was put together. The money that's in Savannah, that's SEDA, Savannah Economic Development Authority, that Trip Tollison runs, and they took the city of Savannah Film Office, which was in the mayor's office, and they took that office into their organization. So that is their money. But both have been, have done well.
Andrew, you want to talk about what the CAB's up to?
Well, thankfully for what the state's been doing, it's just been a lot of success based on all. Exactly. Well, just having that group is phenomenal. The amount of permitting that we have added since we've had an entertainment commission has been phenomenal. We did like 50,000 the first year we started 3 years ago, and already this year we've done over 250,000 just in permits. And that's dollars, not number of permits, sorry, the dollars for it. And that's just by having an active group that's focused on making sure this all happens. And I would love to see all the counties in the state do that. We followed the Savannah model, where it's part of Economic Development Authority. That's really where this belongs. It's economic development around the state. And I think that any county that isn't doing this is just leaving money on the table. You don't have to do anything except focus on bringing in the money that the location folks want to give you anyway. And I'd love to see the rest of the state follow the lead of these other areas. It's not a big investment for what you get in return.
Peter, I'm just going to say a couple more things. I've got to unfortunately run out early to pick up a family member at the airport. But the thing that I sense from all this is the good news is the tax credit program is in place. It's been a major success, and it's going to stay in place. And all these issues that we're talking about, we do have a lot of work to do. There's no doubt about it. But to me, they're minor issues against a very major successful program. And I was thinking the other day about, I've been married 31 years, and when we got married, my wife said to me, she said, "Lewis, I will handle all the minor problems, and I'll come to you to talk about any major problems." Well, in 31 years, we've never had a major problem. So the point is, this program is successful. Other states are envious, and we continue through the work that GPP is doing, and Lee and her staff, and all of you in this room, to do great things for Georgia. Created jobs. I think we're close to 100,000 jobs maybe now that have been created. 9 billion in indirect and maybe 3 billion in direct. Those numbers may not be exact, but we're doing great things here. A lot of work to do, but the success has been phenomenal, and I think the momentum will continue.
Well said. So I guess I'll start to wrap this up before we finally go to final questions from the audience. What's next? Kind of what do you guys see happening next? Any closing remarks you want to make along the lines of Lewis's excellent remarks?
We've got an issue on the games side where we have had to open the credit program up a few times. We are part of the Entertainment Investment Act, the same credit program that film is in. We do have the cap in place. Our cap's been hit several years in a row. Last year it was overclaimed on day one of the program, which meant no company could get more than 77% of what it had been eligible for, and that'll continue being a problem. And this is something film needs to watch if there is going to be an effort to put a cap on it. That cap needs to be monitored and needs to be effective, because it becomes a point where it becomes counterproductive when folks are applying and don't know how much they're going to get as a result. It's a credit to the success of the program that so many people are now active in an area that we used to have almost no presence in. But it does have to be watched. We're going to try and get it raised in this coming session. But again, anyone in film needs to keep a watch on how a credit program with a cap will operate.
We don't want a credit program with a cap. Nobody said anything about that. I didn't say anything about that. There may be some kind of above the line cap. I don't know. But you don't have to beat them by everything, right? If Louisiana gives you $5 million, you don't have to give them $25 million.
You need to be competitive, right?
Exactly. So I think that we're probably going to see some tightening up. I think this is probably going to be the year for some of that. We haven't made any major changes in film since 2012. It's probably time for some housekeeping and just, to keep up with technology. I know that we're concerned about streaming, how you can skip over the logo if you're streaming. It's stuff like that. We started out, we were talking about videotape, so look where we are, doing better.
Awesome.
And on the music side, what we'd like to see is just the music economy continue to grow and more partnerships with the production people, because there's so much talent here in Atlanta, in Georgia, and we're hoping that we can see the production companies using more of the creative music people, and just allowing the music community to understand exactly what's taking place and how that they can get involved. And I think there's a way to get the word out. It's just not happening. So hopefully in 2020 we'll see more of that. And we're looking forward to having our bill passed, and that will help us a lot as well.
Anyone else? All right, so we'll take a few questions and wrap. It's been pretty interactive, which is good. Not too unruly. How about in the back, sir?
Next week, film that was created in Georgia is going to celebrate a Georgia hero, Richard Jewell. How are your different organizations preparing to or anticipating the wave that may be very positive on both but France for Georgia.
Going to the screening?
Tell friends and family and legislators, yeah. There was a gentleman in the back earlier who I skipped over.
Okay, one thing, several things that Georgia needs to stop doing is, number one, we're always too Hollywood focused. I've been writing for Nollywood since 2007, for Hollywood since 2011. And we never focus on international films, which I make a lot of money at writing for them. So I just sold a film to a French director. I've been selling Nollywood films forever and a day. And we also need to stop being so film focused, because we never focus on people like me who write for television. There are a lot of television productions that go on here that we completely ignore and we never acknowledge them. The next thing we need to stop doing is stop telling independents just film. I had a feature film that I put at $1.5 million, and then this guy tells me, oh, well, we can film this for $50,000. Great. Who's going to pay for pre-production? Who's going to pay for development? Who's going to pay for marketing? Who's going to pay for post-production? Who's going to pay for travel? So we just made, what, a $50,000 movie that we're sitting on our shelf at home for what? We need to start teaching the independent people about budgeting. Some of these people don't even know what a grip is. They don't know what an electrician is. They don't know anything about the industry, but they're out here making these films on their iPhones, which become complete garbage, and then they go and they put these in film festivals, and then Hollywood is like, oh, look what the garbage that Georgia's put there. So it's time to ruin our industry, because we keep looking at these, we keep putting these iPhone films in these independent film festivals, because everybody could, oh, just go make it. No, learn your craft. I studied for 2.5 years before I even started writing. I still take writing classes all the time. Actors here won't even go to acting classes because they are, oh my God, I'm in my career now. At this point, I don't want to be an extra. Well, baby, where's your movie in Walmart? Because I ain't gonna see your
Anybody else?
Until we start teaching creatives what they need to know, we're not going to be successful in the things that we're trying to do.
All right, thank you, sir. You.
I hope to catch Mr. Massey before he left. Before the Harper bill was signed, I went down to the governor's office and asked to speak to a legislative assistant. I sat there for a number of hours. Finally, they sent somebody out. They basically said he's going to sign it, of course. What's the heartbeat on that heartbeat bill? What's happening?
Well, it's been enjoined by a federal court, and so it's
what's the taste of what might happen? I guess I know the federal court has stopped it.
Yeah, it's going to work its way through the federal court system for the next 2-3 years, and then we'll see if the U.S. Supreme Court will review it.
Of course, this woman talked about politics. She didn't mention the abortion bill, but I was on the set of Ozark, and I learned that the money man was there, and he said, I'm going to get the F out of here if that thing passes.
And that's why I'm running.
What?
That's why I'm running.
Yeah.
I'm going to keep this non-political. LaRonda.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I think focusing on high school is great, but I also think we need to eschew younger as well, like 3rd and 4th grade, and show and tell is the quickest way into the home and to the parents. And if any and all of us volunteer and go to show and tell or go speak at the school, it doesn't matter, because in the 3rd and 4th grade, I thought if you bought a bag of Cheetos and you said that you designed the logo, that was the biggest thing in the world to me. So 3rd and 4th graders, quickest way into the home and a great way to start, promoting the business.
All right, one more question from the back.
Hi, I'm Betty Vegas. I just wanted to just give you an intro about the education area. I'm an academician, speech theater, and mass communication, just at Georgia State now. And I also have taught that for many years in higher ed, and also an actor and a director. However, the main thing is when I tried to separate myself into public school for a minute because I needed some money, it's the most difficult thing in the world to get in there to teach. So one of the things that you possibly consider is called the Georgia Professional Standards Committee. And if you can get into that area and get them to change some of those rigid rules that most people that are artists are not going to deal with, then that would be one thing, and get them to change it to a permit. And also, they already have mass media in the schools, so basically you just ask them to kind of transform that into a film area. And yes, don't do extra work, don't pay with $64 a day. You can't afford it. It's not about ego, you can't afford it. So I want to say I love the things that you said, but no, don't have any movies involved in my something. But no, we can't afford it. People just
Thank
can't
you.
afford it.
Thank you. All right. Well, I'm going to thank the panel. Thank you very much. I thought this was great. I appreciate it being interactive. I appreciate y'all comments, and I appreciate y'all continuing to support all of our various organizations. Thank you.